Hello and welcome to another video. In today's video we're going to continue with some work on our Cub Cadet original, starting with the rear wheels, and these rear tyres may well be the hardest tyre removals that we've ever done, because even though they're down on pressure at the moment, there is absolutely no give in them. So this could be fun. So today we'll be putting tubes in the rear tyres of the Cub Cadet, which they've gone down a little bit from when we filled them with air, which we think the leak was somewhere on the sidewall, and it may be possible to reseat these tyres. However, we think they are probably the original ones, which means they're over 60 years old, so they probably wouldn't like reshaping or reseating, and it would just be more reliable if we put tubes in them anyway, so that's what we'll be doing. And once we've got the tyres off the rims, there's something we want to do, which is to weigh the wheels themselves without any tyres on them. And that's because these thin rear tyres are quite rare over here in the UK, quite difficult to source. And we have a number of tractors that need these thinner rear tyres that don't have them on there, or rear wheels, sorry. And we're thinking about possibly importing a few sets from America, but obviously the price of the shipping is mostly dependent on the weight of the items you're shipping, so that's why we're weighing these wheels to see whether that is actually a viable method or whether we need to make some thinner wheels out of wider ones. Now, in preparation today, we've already got the tyre changer bolted to the workshop floor there, and we've got the tractor up on axle stands, so I will just quickly whip one of these wheels off. It's not going to come off that easily. And that is the first one off. So before we do any work on the wheels, we've got our weigh beams out here, and like most of our tools, they can be a bit temperamental. We did set these up initially on our workbench, but it didn't like that kind of surface because these like to be nice and even and also have the weight spread evenly across them, which is why we put a ropey bit of plywood on there just to spread the weight. And we're going to experiment first with some wheel weights, which first I'll put on one of the ones from the Cub. Put that on there. That's reading 11 kilograms, which only does kilograms on here, or we can only get it to work in kilograms. So apologies if you're not a fan of kilograms as a unit, but also it's to the nearest whole number, so there's no decimal points, so it's clearly, or it may well be rounding. If we chuck the other Cub weight on top of it, just to make sure that's accurate, that's saying 23 kilograms. So I think that tells us that it is rounding to the nearest whole kilogram, and these are probably around 11.3, 11.4 kilograms each. So if I take these off now, make sure it goes back down to 0, and chuck a Boylan's Ride-a-matic one on there. And that says 25 kilograms, so these Ride-a-matic weights are clearly much heavier than the Cub ones. However, that can be countered because the Cub ones you can actually stack multiple on each wheel, even though we've only got one set. So now we're going to weigh some wheels with tyres already on them, and the reason for that is if we're buying some wheels from America, they probably have tyres on them already, and the people that we're buying them off of will probably want a disposal fee to get rid of the tyres if we're not buying them with the tyres as well. So it'd be easier to just buy the whole lot together and skip that additional fee, but we'll have to see how much that would sting us for shipping. So stick one of the Cub Cadet wheels on there. That's reading 12. Obviously that could be rounded, so we'll stick the second one on there as well. And that's saying 25, which means these must be somewhere between 12.25 and 12.5 kilograms each for that to have rounded to 25 rather than 24. And they do feel pretty heavy. So it's always good to kind of go for the upper limit anyway when it comes to shipping, because obviously you've got packaging as well. We do have a grass tyre here off one of our 1962 Ride-a-matics, which this feels a lot lighter just lifting it compared to these original Dunlop chevrons, but we'll see what the machine says. And that is saying 10 kilograms. Obviously, again, that could be rounded to that. But we've only taken one off, so we'll have to say it's around 10 kilograms. But I assume it's the difference in tyres, grass tyres, which these are the original Goodyear grass tyres, versus the original Dunlop chevrons that they fitted. So with that diversion over for now, we'll now take the valve out of here. And we can get back to removing these tyres to put tubes in them. There we go. Let's put the valve somewhere for safekeeping. And now put it under here to try to break the bead, and we'll have to see how much resistance this puts up. Well, it went in the end. Looked like quite a bit of rusty dust stuff flicked up when it did, so we'll have to see what condition the rims are in. Not sure, it looks like there's a tube in there by the looks of it.
I think you're right, I think it does have a tube.
Right, so I'll just quickly break the bead on the other side as well. Now the bead's broken, we can fix it on the top here and then try and lever the tyre to the other side of the rim using one of the tyre levers. We put some tyre soap around the bead of these tyres, and there really wasn't very much give even trying to apply this tyre soap, so we'll have to see how this goes. Might need a second pair of hands if this doesn't work too well. Try to lever this over. Well, that's worked. Oh, that sounds alright. Yeah, definitely nice and tight. Yeah, need my cameraman's help for this. So it didn't actually take too long with both of us, and we got the tyre lifted and took the tube out. Now the issue we observed before was leaking around the sidewall or the bead of the tyre, which would suggest that this tube was leaking and therefore the tyre was the only thing sealing it, which is a shame because this is a genuine Firestone Tractor and Implement 6-12 tube, so it must be pretty old, but that's going to one side now, and we'll just finish off taking the rest of the tyre off the rim. This off and take it out of the way. rim doesn't look in too bad a condition, so that's good. Now we'll repeat the process for the other wheel, and then we can weigh the wheels together on the weigh beams. We've now taken the tyre off the second rim, and just as well we filmed the first one because that second one was much more difficult. And we've also cleaned up both of the rims here, as you can see a bit less rust around the bead areas now. And we're going to weigh these without any tyres on now as well. So if I put one on here to start with, that says 4. It's kind of flicking between 4 and 5. So I'd imagine that's around the 4.5 kg point, but it seems to be more settled on 4. So maybe something like 4.4 kg. We'll see when we dump this other one on there. That's then gone up to 9. Now, as we said before, that means it's rounding to 9. So it could be within half a kg above or below. I think it's more likely that the pair are very close to 9 when you add them together. Otherwise, there would be more certainly saying 5 on there on an individual one. I will just put the other one on there to see what it says, see if it says the same or different. Yeah, that says 4, it hasn't even flicked to 5. So I think we can safely say a pair of these thin rear wheels without any tyres on is 9 kg, which is very helpful for pricing up the shipping. But what we can do now is put the new tubes in them and put the tyres back on. We've cleaned up the tyres a bit, including vacuuming the inside to try and get as much of the dust and stuff that was in there out as possible, and then put a fresh layer of tyre soap on both sides of the bead. And these are very stiff, these tyres, so I'm not sure how well we're going to be able to do most of this. Not sure what's leaking there, but there's an air leak somewhere on our tyre changer. And I think pretty soon already we're going to need tyre levers out to get this bit on the rim. And then once the first side is on the rim, we'll put the tube in there and then try to get the second side in. All of that is probably easier said than done. We have got the tube in here now, and that was a little bit difficult, not too bad. However, the next part will probably be more difficult, which is putting this rim of the tyre inside the wheel, which we used one of our big tyre levers that came with this tyre changer for, which in theory should make it a lot easier, and it does when you've got flexible tyres, unlike this one here. So we're going to do it off camera because it will take us quite a while. And we need to make sure that we're not catching or pinching our new tube, because that will put a hole straight through it. And we really don't need to be doing this again, especially with how difficult these tyres are. But we'll start somewhere around here and work around. The idea being that you finish up pretty much where the valve is, because the last bit, instead of going all the way around in a circle, you kind of lift the lever up and then dump maybe a quarter of the bead over rather than skimming around the whole lot, and the tube will be closest to the top where the valve is, so that's where there's more chance of catching it. So we prefer to be doing the kind of lifting over bit at that point, or that's the plan anyway. We'll see how it goes. Just a note on tubes before we do that. I've mentioned this before on the channel, but I'll mention it again now. This is a bit of a top tip for these 6-12 tyres if you're putting tubes into them. Over here in the UK, to get the 6-12 tubes is quite expensive, but for about a quarter of the cost, you can get these 145/155 R12 car tubes, which fit exactly the same, pretty much. But as I said, quarter of the cost, and they're much easier to get hold of, which is part of the reason they are cheaper to buy. And then you have to put one of these, I forgot what they're called, fennules or something like that? Ferrules? I don't know.
Ferrules, perhaps.
Ferrules, yeah. And that goes over these valve stems to take them up to the larger size that was used originally on these wheels, which I think you still have to use these even if you buy new 6-12 tubes, because it's very hard to get some with the old style valve stems. But as you can see, we put a bit of air into this, which is what we always do when we install them, because then when you get it past the tyre, it kind of pops out and goes into place a bit better. It's just easier really to put on. So we will now get this tyre fully onto the rim, or at least that's the plan. Might apply some more tyre soap, and we'll come back to you in a minute, hopefully with that on there. So we have the tyre mounted now, and we went round the outside of the rim and the valve with some washing up liquid, just to see if there was any bubbles, meaning if there was any air leaks, and there aren't, so that's all good. That was just as difficult as we expected it to be with how stiff this tyre is, but our tyre lever, this end of it, comes in very handy. This hook part tucks under the rim, and then this part kind of stretches the tyre, and then when you turn the lever around, because it's stretched a bit, it tucks under the rim rather than sitting above it like the rest of it. And the key thing that we found worked well was kind of pushing the other side of the tyre down into this kind of smaller diameter area of the wheel, so that there was less tension on it and we could push more of the tyre towards the bit that we were trying to tuck under the rim. Anyway, I'm not sure if I explained that the best, but that is what it is. Eventually we'll come up with a better way of doing this. We've already got one of these things, which is what they have on those automated, or well, I don't know if automated is the right word, but one of those tyre machines they have at most tyre shops. And the advantage, of course, is that's plastic, so it shouldn't damage the rims like these. This scrapes them quite badly, unfortunately, which we don't have anything painted up yet, but you'll want something like this on there. And we need to work out how we're going to mount that onto a lever, but that is not today's job, but that's one of the future improvements that we've got planned for our tyre changer. There are a couple of other things as well, but that is further down the line. We'll now do the other one off camera because it is just the repeat process and come back to you. We've now finished the other wheel as well, and again, no leaks or anything on the washing up liquid test. Now the key here is to make sure that we've actually put one tyre on one way, one tyre the other, so that we don't have two left wheels or two right wheels. So we will find out now. This is for the right hand side, and appears to be all good. Now when it comes to mounting these wheels, on Bolands you have a nice big lip on the hubs that you can just sit the wheel on and then line up your studs easily. On wheel horses it seems they've got a tiny thin lip on the hubs that you can kind of somewhat sit the wheel on, but then the second you think you've lined it up it will drop off, so that's not very helpful. We've discovered on the Cub there is absolutely no lip at all. That's just a completely flat hub. So what we've done is we've put a couple of the studs in from the back, and the idea being that I can use those to locate the wheel on here. And then once I've located the wheel, the other three studs can be put in. We can wind out those backwards ones and then put them in from this side, and it's all lined up, in theory at least. We have the wheels back onto the tractor now, and it's back on the floor. And now that we can rely on the air staying in the tyres, we're actually going to put the wheel weights back on in a minute. However, before we do that, since we have the tractor in here and the weighing scales out, we thought we might as well weigh the tractor, see how much it weighs, just out of interest. And we put some bits of timber on the weighing scales to kind of balance out the weight across the length of the tractor, and we've zeroed the scales. So now we just need to get the tractor onto here. So we think we're probably going to have to do this with one of us on each wheel, kind of rolling it back and then watching what the planks do. But we'll come back to you in a minute, hopefully with the tractor onto our weighing scales, and we can see how much it weighs. So we have the tractor on the weigh beams now, and the computer thing is saying 221 kilograms, which I'm not fully sure what we were expecting. Let us know if that's pretty much what you thought the tractor would weigh. Obviously it's got that hitch on the back, so tractor itself would weigh a little bit less. But something we did think about doing, and we could do at some point after this video, is another video in future where we get our weigh beams out again and then weigh small, medium and large Bolans, and then the different sizes of wheel horses, and of course this Cub Cadet and everything, and see how they all compare, what machines are the heaviest, what are lighter, and see if there's any machines that are surprisingly light or heavy. I think that might be quite an interesting video, so let us know if you fancy seeing that in future. We have the wheel weights on the rear wheels again now, and we did actually think about replacing the tubes in the front tyres as well, just so they were all done, but we didn't in the end because these hold air, whereas on the rears we could actually hear the air leak at one point, so that's why we wanted to switch the tubes on there. That's a good job done, and another thing ticked off the list for this tractor. It means reliably we can go to it and know that we'll be able to push it around easily because we won't have a flat tyre, hopefully. Now, while we were doing this job, we were actually thinking about something on the front end, which is when you have a PTO on these tractors, it's driven off this end of the crankshaft, so there'd be a pulley on here, and then there'd be belts going down to this area at the front here. And because of that, Cub Cadet had made a guard that goes across the front there. And just to show you what that looks like, we did a quick Google search for Cub Cadet originals, and there's this quite nice example here, and you can see the plate covering that section under the grille there. Now, we were thinking about how we might want to make one of those for this tractor at some point, and we actually had a look in our scrap metal bin, and we found this, which appears to be pretty much the right dimensions to go around there. It might need enlarging slightly, but I would say that's probably usable for making up one of those guards. And I don't think either of our other Cub Cadet originals have one of those. We need to check, but we could easily make up another couple for our other tractors as well. So that was quite handy to have spotted that just while we were doing these other jobs on the Cub Cadet original. But I hope you've enjoyed watching us struggle with tyres, and that is it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.